What happens when you come back after 10 years and see your own name on a ceremony sign, only to be dragged out as a stranger? Why did my son call me a homeless man while my mother was hidden and starved in a shed? By nightfall, the truth surfaced, and by morning, everyone involved was trying to undo what they had already shown the world. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. I stood at the edge of the town square pavilion, watching workers hang a banner with my name on it. Miles Carrig Day of Recognition. The letters stretched wide across the white fabric, catching the afternoon sun. I had driven 12 hours to get here, thinking maybe after 10 years away, things could be mended. I thought wrong. The pavilion hummed with setup noise. Folding chairs lined up in neat rows. A microphone stand waited at the center. People moved with purpose, arranging flowers and adjusting sound equipment. I recognized some faces, older now, carrying the weight of a decade I had missed. I walked closer, my boots scraping against the pavement. A woman with a clipboard glanced up, her smile automatic until her eyes met mine. The smile faltered. She looked away quickly, pretending to check her list. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm Miles Carrig." She blinked twice, the clipboard lowering. "I'm sorry?" "The ceremony. That's my name up there." Her mouth opened, but no words came. Instead, she turned toward a younger man setting up chairs nearby. He had my nose, my build, but his eyes held something I didn't recognize. Rowan. My son. 26 now, wearing a pressed shirt and a face that had learned to lie. He straightened when he saw me, his expression shifting through surprise to something harder. He walked over, each step deliberate, measured. When he spoke, his voice carried just loud enough for the volunteers nearby to hear. "Sir, this event is invitation only. You need to leave." The word hit me like a fist. "Sir, not Dad, not even Miles." "Rowan, it's me." "I don't know who you are." His jaw tightened. "But you're trespassing." A security guard materialized at my elbow, his hand resting near his radio. The volunteer with the clipboard had already stepped back, her phone angled toward us. Others stopped their work, heads turning. "I'm his father," I said to the guard, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. Rowan's laugh was short, sharp. "This man's clearly confused, probably homeless. We get them sometimes." The guard's grip on my arm was firm but not rough, professional. He guided me toward the alley behind the pavilion while phones rose like flowers turning toward sunlight. Cameras captured my face, my worn jacket, my confusion. The crowd accepted the narrative without question. Why wouldn't they? Rowan stood confident, surrounded by people who knew him, trusted him. In the alley, the guard released me with an apologetic shrug. "Just doing my job." I nodded, watching him walk back. The sounds of the pavilion faded as I stood there trying to process what had just happened. My son had erased me in front of dozens of people, made me a stranger in my own town, at an event using my own name. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I opened the message and felt my stomach drop. A photo. A small shed, weathered wood, a rusted padlock on the door. No words, just the image. But I knew that shed. It sat at the edge of town, near the old railroad tracks. Abandoned for years, or so I thought. I zoomed in on the photo, searching for context. In the bottom corner, barely visible, was a plastic water jug, the kind you'd use for rationing. My mother's face flashed in my mind. Eileen Carrig, 72 years old, sharp as ever when I left. I had called her twice in the past week, both times reaching voicemail. Rowan had texted back saying she was resting, not feeling up to calls. The phone buzzed again, same number. "She's asking for you." I stared at those 4 words until they blurred. Then I started walking toward the shed, my heart hammering against my ribs. The ceremony could wait. Recognition could wait. Whatever game Rowan was playing, whatever he had convinced the town to believe, none of it mattered if my mother was locked in that shed. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the empty street. Behind me, the pavilion lights flickered on, bright and cheerful. Ahead, darkness gathered like a held breath. The walk to my childhood house took 20 minutes. I needed to see it first, needed to understand what had changed while I was gone. The neighborhood looked the same, tree-lined streets, painted fences, yards kept neat. But something felt off, like a photo edited just enough to seem wrong. My old house stood on the corner, white with blue shutters. I had spent 18 years there before college, before archaeology pulled me away, before TV work made me a field driver for correspondence. A practical job, steady income, nothing glamorous. Just me behind the wheel while reporters chased stories. The driveway held a newer car, Rowan's probably. The porch furniture had been replaced. Flowers bloomed in beds my mother used to tend. Everything looked maintained, loved even. But the windows on the second floor, her room, had curtains drawn tight in the middle of the day. I knocked, waited, knocked again. The door opened a crack. Blaine Holt stood there, his expression neutral. 41, clean cut, wearing casual clothes that somehow looked formal. He had appeared around year 8 of my absence, introduced through a mutual acquaintance as someone who helped families organize events. Now he seemed to live here. Miles. He didn't open the door wider. Didn't expect to see you. I came for the ceremony, and to see my mother. She's resting. Doctor's orders. Which doctor? His smile was patient, practiced. The one we consult regularly. She's fine, just needs quiet. I'd like to see her. Not today. She's had a long week preparing for tomorrow's event. He started to close the door. Maybe after things settle. I caught the edge of the door. Blaine, I'm her son. And I'm her caretaker, appointed and legal. The door closed with a soft click. I stood there, hand still raised, staring at painted wood. Appointed. Legal. Words that carried weight I didn't understand yet. The diner sat 2 blocks away, unchanged since my childhood. Same red vinyl booths, same laminated menus, same smell of coffee and grease. I slid into a corner booth where I could watch the door. The waitress recognized me, her smile uncertain. Miles Carrig, heard you were back. Just visiting. She poured coffee without asking. Big day tomorrow, whole town's excited. I wrapped my hands around the mug. What exactly is being recognized? Your work, I guess. Archaeological finds, that TV stuff. Rowan organized it all. Real devoted son. She refilled the sugar dispenser at the next table, lowering her voice. Shame you weren't around more. Eileen talks about you sometimes when she's out. When does she get out? The waitress paused. Not lately, come to think of it. Blaine handles her appointments now. 3 men entered, voices loud with the confidence of local importance. One was Rowan. They took a booth across the diner, ordering without looking at menus. Their conversation drifted over the empty space between us. Tomorrow's set, Rowan said. Press confirmed, state representatives sending remarks, even got the Historical Society involved. Your father would be proud, one of the others said. Would have been, Rowan corrected, if he'd bothered to stay. They laughed. Easy, comfortable laughter that came from shared understanding. I sipped my coffee, each word landing like a small stone in still water. The waitress brought them food. When she returned to refill my cup, I asked, What happened to the old storage shed by the railroad? She frowned. Still there, I think. Why? Just remembering. Used to play there as a kid. Wouldn't now. Place is probably full of rats. She moved to another table. I pulled out my phone, studying the photo again. The shed looked maintained, not abandoned. The padlock was new. Someone had cleared the weeds from around the door. Under my coffee saucer, I found a receipt someone had left behind. Generic supplies, bottled water, canned soup, paper towels, dated 3 days ago. The store name meant nothing special, but the quantity did. 24 bottles of water, 12 cans of soup. Enough to stock a small space for someone who couldn't leave. I pocketed the receipt and left cash on the table. Rowan's group was still talking, their voices full of plans and certainty. Outside, evening had arrived. The ceremony lights glowed in the distance, but I turned away, heading toward the railroad tracks. The shed appeared exactly as the photo showed. Weathered wood, rusted padlock, small and isolated. A single bulb hung above the door, recently installed. Someone had run an extension cord from a nearby pole. I circled the structure slowly. No windows, one door. The padlock required a key I didn't have. I pressed my ear to the wood, listening. "Mom?" Silence. Then faint, a shuffling sound. A cough. "Mom, it's Miles." "Miles?" Her voice was thin, uncertain. "They said you weren't coming." "I'm here. Are you alone?" "Always alone. They bring food twice a day. Tell me to stay quiet. Rowan says it's temporary until things stabilize." My hands balled into fists. "What things?" "I don't understand anymore. He says I get confused, that I need supervision." Blaine agrees. A pause. "Do I get confused, Miles?" "No, Mom. You don't." "Then why am I here?" I had no answer that made sense. Instead, I took photos. The padlock, the extension cord, the cleared ground, the water jug visible through a gap in the boards. I recorded her voice, asking permission first. "I'm going to fix this," I said. "Be careful. They're very sure of themselves." I walked back to my motel room as stars appeared overhead. The ceremony lights still glowed in the distance, celebrating a man who apparently didn't exist anymore. My phone buzzed once, a text from a number I recognized. Cal Red, an attorney I'd worked with years ago on media contracts and some elder law cases. "Heard you're in town? Coffee tomorrow before the chaos?" I replied with a time and place. Then I sat on the motel bed, staring at the photos on my phone. Somewhere between leaving and returning, I had been erased. Not just forgotten, but actively removed. And my mother had been hidden away like an inconvenience. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead. Tomorrow was supposed to be my day of recognition. But tonight, I had work to do. The kind that required patience, documentation, and a clear head. The kind I was good at. On the motel desk, something caught the light. A small USB drive I didn't remember putting there. No note, no label, just 8 gigabytes of unknown data waiting to be opened. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop, watching the screen load. Folders appeared, documents, photos, videos. Each file was labeled with dates spanning the past 3 years. Someone had been watching, recording, organizing evidence. The first video showed my mother's house from across the street, time-stamp from 18 months ago. Eileen walked to the mailbox, moving slowly but steady. Rowan's car pulled up. Words were exchanged, too distant to hear. She handed him something. Keys, maybe. He drove away. She went inside. The next video, 6 months later. Eileen at the door, trying to leave. Blaine appeared, his hand on her shoulder, gently steering her back. The door closed. She didn't come out again that day. Photos documented changes. Locks replaced. Window treatments added. A hospital bed moved into the downstairs room. Medical supply deliveries. None of it necessarily wrong in isolation, but together they told a story of increasing control. Documents filled another folder. Printed emails discussing managing the situation and protecting assets. Bank statements showing regular transfers from Eileen's account to one controlled by Rowan and Blaine. Nothing technically illegal if proper guardianship existed, but the amounts were large, steady, draining. The numbers told their own story. Over 3 years, Nearly 200,000 had moved from her savings into accounts she couldn't access. Monthly transfers disguised as care expenses, medical costs, household maintenance. But the receipts didn't match. The care home inquiries went unanswered. The money simply disappeared into their control. I spent 2 hours reviewing everything, making notes, cross-referencing dates. Whoever compiled this had done careful work. Each piece of evidence connected to the next, building a timeline that was impossible to dismiss. One video stood out, dated 6 months ago. Rowan and Blaine in the driveway, voices raised enough to carry to the camera across the street. The audio was faint but clear enough. "She's asking about Miles again," Rowan said. "Tell her he doesn't care. Tell her he's too busy." Blaine's voice. "What if he actually shows up?" "He won't. 10 years of nothing? He's not coming back. But if he does, then we make sure nobody believes him. We've been here. We've done the work. He's a stranger who abandoned his family." The video ended. I played it 3 more times, each viewing making my jaw tighter. The final file was a text document with one line: "She deserves better. They deserve exposure." No signature, no contact information, just evidence and a push toward action. I copied everything to 3 separate drives, organizing files by category: financial exploitation, false imprisonment, witness testimony, timeline documentation. Each drive told the complete story, impossible to dismiss or ignore. Sleep came in fragments. I kept seeing my mother's face, hearing her voice through the shed wall asking if she was confused, knowing she wasn't, knowing they had convinced her to doubt herself. At dawn, I met Cal Red at a quiet cafe 2 towns over. He looked older than I remembered, gray threading through his beard, but his eyes were sharp. We ordered coffee and sat outside where conversations stayed private. 10 years, he said. "You look like you've been living in a truck." "Basically have been. Field work isn't glamorous." He stirred his coffee. "So why the sudden return?" I told him everything. The ceremony, the rejection, the shed, the USB drive contents. His expression darkened with each detail. When I showed him the files on my laptop, he went quiet, scrolling through documents and videos methodically. "This is substantial," he said finally. "Elder exploitation, possible false imprisonment, financial manipulation. But you'll need official channels. This isn't something you handle alone. I don't want her trapped another day." "Understood. But if you move wrong, they lawyer up and drag this out for months. She stays locked up while courts process paperwork." He leaned back. "What you need is visibility. Make it public, make it impossible to ignore, and make it fast." The ceremony. Exactly. They're already gathering press, officials, community leaders. They've built you a stage. Use it. We talked strategy for another hour. Cal made calls, pulling in contacts from elder protection services and media law. He couldn't represent me directly, conflict of interest with some county contracts, but he could guide the process, make sure the right people were ready to act when the moment came. "You'll need a clear statement," he said. "Facts, timeline, no emotion. Let the evidence speak." "What about Rowan?" Cal's jaw tightened. "That's between you two, but legally he's complicit. Whether he initiated or followed, he participated. That matters." "Will there be consequences?" "If the evidence holds, and it will, yes. Financial exploitation of an elder is a felony in this state. False imprisonment, even without physical restraint, carries serious penalties. And if they've been filing false reports or forging documents," he trailed off, "they're looking at real time." The words settled over me. Real time. Prison. My son facing years behind bars because he'd chosen control over care, money over family. "He made his choice," Cal said, reading my expression. "You're just making sure it has consequences." I nodded, but something in my chest felt heavy. Cal handed me a business card. "This is Detective Iris Vance. She works elder abuse cases for the county. I briefed her this morning. She'll be at the ceremony, plain clothes, watching. When you present evidence, she'll be ready to move immediately. How fast can they get my mother out? If conditions match your description, within the hour. Paramedics will evaluate her, transport to the hospital for full assessment. Social services will provide temporary housing until legal authority is sorted. And Rowan? Detained for questioning at minimum, depending on what they find in that shed, arrested. I left the cafe with 3 USB drives in my pocket and a plan that felt both necessary and impossible. This was my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, watched grow into someone I didn't recognize anymore. But this was also my mother. Locked in a shed, starved of freedom, convinced she was the problem. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. I drove back to town, stopping at the county records office. The building was old, all stone and tall windows, holding decades of documented lives. The clerk was young, efficient, pulling files without judgment. "Property records for 412 Oak Street," I said. She typed, waited, printed. The house was still in Eileen's name. No transfers, no sales, no changes in 3 years. Whatever control Rowan and Blaine had, it wasn't legal ownership. Guardianship filings for Eileen Carrig? More typing, more waiting. She shook her head. Nothing on file? Power of attorney? Not in our system. You'd need to check with her attorney if she has one. I took copies of everything, adding them to my evidence folder. No legal authority, no court orders, no documentation of incompetency. Just 2 men making decisions for a woman who never agreed to surrender her autonomy. The library was 3 blocks away. I had spent hours there as a kid, reading about archaeology, dreaming of discoveries. Now I was here searching for proof of my own existence. The media room held archived footage from local TV coverage. I found segments from my work, background shots mostly, me loading equipment, driving crews to remote locations, coordinating logistics. Nothing glamorous, but it showed consistency. One clip stood out, a correspondent interviewing a county official about drought conditions 3 years ago. I was visible in the background, checking tire pressure, preparing for a long drive into affected areas. The correspondent mentioned me by name, thanking Miles Carrig for his reliable support on these challenging assignments. Reliable. That word mattered. I copied the segment, along with others showing me at work over the years. A decade of footage proving I wasn't absent, just employed, not abandoning family, just earning a living in a field that required travel. The librarian helped me access newspaper archives. Small mentions, nothing major. Local man supports archaeological survey. TV crew credits field driver for logistics success. Mundane stuff that proved I existed, worked, maintained professional relationships. I printed articles, added them to folders. Each piece building a counter-narrative to the one Rowan had constructed. My phone buzzed. Nora Pike, the local reporter. "Miles, I'm hearing strange things about tomorrow's ceremony. Want to give me context?" "Tomorrow, after Rowan speaks." That sounds ominous. It's necessary. I'll have my crew positioned front and center. Thank you. She was quiet for a moment. Is Eileen okay? No, but she will be. I hung up before she could ask more questions. At the TV station parking lot, I ran into 3 colleagues from past assignments. They recognized me immediately, their greetings genuine. "Miles Carrig, thought you'd forgotten about us," one said. "Just working, different regions, different crews. Heard there's some ceremony tomorrow. You famous now?" Not how I'd put it. We talked for 20 minutes. They asked about recent assignments, shared updates on people we'd worked with. Normal conversation that felt surreal given what I was planning. But it also felt important. These were people who knew me as I actually was, not as Rowan had painted me. "You should come by the station tomorrow," one said. "After your big event. Some folks would love to see you." "Maybe I will." Walking back to my motel, I passed the community center. A poster in the window showed tomorrow's schedule. Miles Carrig Day of Recognition. 10 a.m. start time. Speeches, scholarship announcement, press conference. Rowan's photo appeared next to mine, both of us smiling in images from different decades. I photographed the poster, adding it to my documentation. They had built something impressive, a public relations machine running on a foundation of lies. My anonymous benefactor texted again. They're planning something extra tomorrow, bringing in a TV crew from the state capitol. Rowan wants maximum coverage. I replied, good, more witnesses. Are you ready? Yes. She's been asking about you again. They told her you sent a message saying you're too busy to visit. My hands tightened on the phone. Tomorrow that changes. I hope so. She doesn't have much fight left. The message deleted itself, leaving no trace. Back at the motel, I organized everything one final time. 3 identical USB drives, each containing complete evidence files. One labeled for officials, one for media, one marked backup. I sealed them in envelopes, wrote instructions clearly. The financial documents alone were damning. 200,000 transferred over 3 years, documented in monthly increments. The emails discussing asset protection, the videos showing increasing isolation, the recorded conversation about making sure nobody would believe me if I returned, and the shed. That single image of my mother's confinement, supported by my recording of her voice, would be impossible to dismiss. I called the shed location one more time, needing to hear her voice. Mom, it's Miles. You keep coming back. She sounded tired. They said you wouldn't. I'm not leaving again, not without you. Rowan brought food earlier. Said tomorrow's a big day. Said I should be proud of him. What did you say? Nothing. I've learned silence is easier. Tomorrow you can speak as loud as you want. I don't know if I remember how. You will. I hung up and stared at the ceiling. The fan turned slowly, its shadow crossing the light again and again. Somewhere in this town, Rowan was probably rehearsing his speech, confident in his narrative. Blaine was likely managing final details, ensuring everything ran smoothly. They had no idea what was coming. Cal texted late. Detective Vance confirmed. She'll have backup staged nearby. The moment you present evidence, they move. Hospital transport arranged, social services ready, everything's in place. I replied, thank you. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be intense. But sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about Rowan as a child, bright and curious, asking questions about everything. When had that curiosity turned into calculation? When had care become control? I didn't have answers. Maybe I never would. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and reviewed my statement one final time. Short, factual, devastating. No accusations, just evidence presented in clear sequence. Let people draw their own conclusions. The motel window showed a dark street, empty except for distant streetlights. In 8 hours, everything would change. The careful lies would collapse. The hidden truth would surface. And my mother would be free. But first, I needed to stand on that stage and dismantle my son's carefully constructed world. The USB drive sat on the desk, small and ordinary, containing enough evidence to destroy lives. I picked one up, feeling its weight. So light, so powerful. Tomorrow, I would use it. The morning arrived cold and bright. I dressed carefully. Clean shirt, decent jacket, nothing flashy. The goal was credibility, not confrontation. I looked like what I was, a working man who drove trucks and managed logistics. Steady, reliable, real. My phone showed messages from Cal. Elder Protection Services were briefed and positioned 3 blocks away. Detective Vance would be in the crowd, 3rd row, wearing a blue jacket. County Social Services had a team ready. Everyone was waiting for my signal. I grabbed breakfast at the diner, different waitress this time, younger, less talkative. The morning crowd discussed the ceremony like it was a holiday. Miles Carrig Day had become real to them, a celebration of someone who didn't exist in the form they imagined. A man at the counter recognized me from yesterday's pavilion incident. He leaned toward his companion, whispering. They both looked at me, confused. I drank my coffee, letting them wonder. Outside, the town had transformed overnight. Banners hung from streetlights. Signs directed people toward the courthouse. Local shops displayed photos of me from years ago, images I'd never seen before. Rowan must have collected them, building a mythology. I walked to the courthouse steps, arriving at 9:30. The setup was more elaborate than I'd expected. Professional sound system, multiple camera positions, chairs for at least 300 people. A banner stretched across the courthouse facade, honoring Miles Carrig, a legacy of discovery and dedication. The irony was suffocating. Rowan stood near the podium, shaking hands with arriving officials. He wore a dark suit, his hair styled perfectly, his smile practiced. Blaine hovered nearby, clipboard in hand, managing details with efficient precision. They looked professional, trustworthy, devoted. I stayed at the back, near the media section. Nora Pike spotted me immediately, gave a slight nod. Her camera operator adjusted position, ensuring I was in frame. Other reporters noticed, their curiosity sharpening. The crowd grew quickly. By 9:45, nearly 400 people filled the space. State Representative's office had sent someone. Historical Society members wore official badges. Local business owners clustered together, pleased to be associated with community recognition. They had no idea they were about to witness something entirely different. At 10 sharp, a local council member took the podium. His voice boomed through speakers, welcoming everyone, praising community values, celebrating shared heritage. Standard ceremony language, smooth and forgettable. Then he introduced Rowan as a devoted son honoring his father's remarkable journey. Applause filled the square. Cameras focused on Rowan as he approached the microphone, his expression humble and proud simultaneously. He'd practiced this, perfected every gesture. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice strong and clear. "Today we honor a man who chose a difficult path. My father, Miles Carrig, dedicated his life to discovery, to archaeology, to documentation, to bringing important stories to light through his work in television." He paused, letting the words settle. His career took him far from home, across 12 states, supporting coverage of droughts, disasters, archaeological surveys, important work, necessary work. Another pause. But it came at a cost. The crowd leaned forward, attentive. He missed birthdays, holidays, graduations, the daily moments that build family. Rowan's voice carried carefully calibrated emotion. He chose his path, and we must respect that choice, even as we acknowledge what it meant for those left behind. Sympathetic murmurs rippled through the audience. He had them completely. My grandmother, Eileen Carrig, often speaks of him with pride. She understands sacrifice. She raised me to understand it too. His hand gripped the podium edge. Today, we honor his contributions while committing to different values. Family first, community first, presence over absence. More applause. Cameras captured approving faces in the crowd. In his name, we're establishing the Miles Carrig Memorial Scholarship for local students pursuing careers in archaeology and field research. A way to turn absence into opportunity, sacrifice into support for the next generation. He detailed scholarship criteria, funding sources, selection processes, professional, organized, impressive. The perfect tribute from a devoted son to an absent father. This scholarship represents forgiveness, Rowan continued. Understanding that people make choices, that distance doesn't erase legacy. We honor who my father was, even as we commit to being who he couldn't. The crowd was his, completely. Phones recorded his words. Officials nodded approval. The state representative's aide made notes. This was a political success, a community triumph. Rowan wrapped up with a call to action, urging donations to the scholarship fund, encouraging young people to pursue their passions while maintaining family bonds. His final line landed perfectly. We remember the absent by being present. Standing ovation. Cameras captured the moment from multiple angles. Rowan stepped back from the microphone, basking in approval that felt earned, deserved, real. The council member returned to the podium. We'll now open for questions and comments from... I stepped forward. The movement caught attention immediately. People turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. Rowan's eyes found mine, his expression shifting from triumph to alarm in seconds. I have a comment, I said, my voice carrying without amplification. Nora's camera swung toward me. Other crews scrambled to adjust positions. Detective Vance stood, hand moving subtly toward her radio. Sir, this is a private ceremony, Blaine called out, moving to intercept me. About me, I replied, still walking. I'm Miles Carrig. The crowd went silent. Phones rose. The state representative's aide stood, suddenly alert. This wasn't celebration anymore. I reached the podium. Rowan moved to block me, but the council member, clearly panicked, gestured him back. Public event, public comment. Cameras were rolling. They couldn't stop me without looking worse. I placed my folder on the podium, opened it to reveal organized evidence. My hands were steady. 10 years of driving correspondence through hostile environments had taught me calm under pressure. My name is Miles Carrig, I began, voice level and clear. I'm 47 years old. I work as a field driver for television news crews. For the past decade, I've been on the road supporting coverage across 12 states. Yesterday, I returned home to attend this ceremony and to see my mother, Eileen Carrig. I pulled out the first photo, the shed exterior, held it high enough for front rows to see. This is where my mother currently lives, a storage shed near the railroad tracks locked from outside. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras zoomed. The state representative's aide leaned forward, eyes widening. Yesterday, my son Rowan publicly denied knowing me, had me removed from the pavilion setup. Last night, I found my mother confined in this structure, with limited food, water, and no freedom to move. I laid out more photos systematically. The padlock, the interior glimpse showing a camping lantern and rationed supplies, the extension cord running from a nearby pole. Each image a hammer strike against their narrative. For 3 years, my mother has been increasingly isolated. Her financial accounts show regular transfers. I held up bank statements, totaling nearly $200,000, moved into accounts controlled by my son and Blaine Holt. Detective Vance was moving now, radio to her ear. Other officers in the crowd shifted positions. Mr. Holt claims to be her appointed caretaker. I pulled out county records. These documents show no guardianship filing, no competency hearing, no legal authority granting him or my son power over her life or finances. The council member's face had gone pale. Officials on stage exchanged urgent glances. I don't claim to be a perfect son. I've been absent, focused on work, traveling for employment. I met Rowan's eyes directly. But absence isn't abandonment. Distance isn't erasure, and nothing justifies locking a 72-year-old woman in a shed. Rowan found his voice, desperate. She needs supervision. She gets confused. Then where's the medical documentation? I held up more papers. Where's the doctor's evaluation? Where's the court order? I turned back to the crowd. There is none, because she isn't confused. She's controlled. I played the audio recording, my mother's voice echoing through speakers. Do I get confused, Miles? My response, no, Mom, you don't. Her voice again. Then why am I here? The silence that followed was absolute. 400 people frozen, processing what they'd just heard. I'm not here for recognition or revenge, I continued. I'm here because my mother asked why she's being held, and she deserves an answer that isn't a lie. I held up 3 envelopes. These contain complete documentation: photos, recordings, financial records, timeline of isolation, witness statements. I'm requesting immediate welfare check and investigation into elder exploitation and false imprisonment. Detective Vance had reached the podium. I'll take those. I handed her the envelopes. She opened one, scanning contents quickly while speaking into her radio. Her expression grew harder with each page. The county official who had been seated on stage approached. This requires immediate action. The ceremony is concluded pending investigation. Rowan stepped forward, his confidence crumbling. This is a misunderstanding. She needs care. She can't be alone. Then you'll have opportunity to present documentation supporting that claim. Detective Vance cut him off. Right now, we're conducting a welfare check. Officers are en route to the location. She turned to Blaine. Mr. Holt, I need you to remain available for questioning. Blaine's face drained of color. I haven't done anything wrong. I was helping. By locking an elderly woman in a shed? Vance's voice was ice. Stay where you are. The crowd erupted in confused conversation. Cameras captured everything: Rowan's trapped expression, Blaine's panic, officials conferring urgently, me standing at the podium with evidence spread before me. Nora approached, microphone ready. Miles, can you walk us through the timeline? I did, calmly, factually. 3 years of increasing control. Financial transfers disguised as care expenses. Isolation justified as medical necessity. And finally, confinement that crossed every legal and moral line. Other reporters crowded in, questions flying. I answered each one, sticking to facts, avoiding speculation. This wasn't about drama. It was about a 72-year-old woman who deserved freedom and dignity. Cal appeared at my shoulder, having monitored from the crowd. Clean, factual, devastating, exactly what we planned. Will she be okay? Officers are there now, paramedics standing by. He glanced at Rowan, who stood isolated near the podium, everything collapsing around him. Your son's going to face serious consequences. He earned them. Within 20 minutes, word came through police radios. Eileen had been found in conditions matching my description exactly. Weak from inadequate nutrition, but mentally clear and aware. Paramedics were transporting her to the hospital for full evaluation and care. The scholarship fund was quietly suspended. The banners came down. Miles Carrig Day ceased to exist before it fully began. The courthouse steps cleared slowly as people processed what they'd witnessed. A celebration had become an exposure. A tribute had revealed exploitation. And it had all happened on camera, recorded from multiple angles, impossible to deny or spin. Detective Vance took statements from everyone involved. She started with me, reviewing evidence methodically. Then Rowan, then Blaine. Their confidence had evaporated, replaced by scrambling justifications that contradicted each other. We were protecting her, Rowan insisted. By locking her in a shed? Vance's tone was flat. She was becoming difficult, making demands, questioning our decisions. You mean exercising her rights as an autonomous adult? Rowan had no answer. Blaine tried a different approach. The money was for her care. We kept detailed records. Then you'll provide those records, Vance said, along with receipts showing how $200,000 was spent on care for a woman locked in a shed. His silence was admission enough. I watched from a distance as they tried to salvage something from the wreckage of their lies. But there was nothing left to salvage. The evidence was too complete, too damning, captured by too many cameras. Nora Pike approached me with her crew. Miles, we're going live in 5 minutes. Can you give a brief statement? My mother's being evaluated at the hospital. That's where I'm going. What about the ceremony, the scholarship? There is no ceremony. There never should have been. I looked directly at the camera. This was built on lies about who I was, And what happened to my mother? Do you have anything to say to your son? I paused. Consequences aren't punishment. They're just truth catching up. The interview aired within minutes. By noon, it was being picked up by regional stations. The story was too compelling to ignore. A son faking a ceremony while his father's mother was locked away, exposed when the father returned and dismantled the lie in front of hundreds of witnesses. Detective Vance finished with Rowan and Blaine, then approached me. You're free to go. We'll need follow-up statements, but for now, go see your mother. What about them? Detained for questioning, charges pending, but at minimum we're looking at elder exploitation, false imprisonment, and financial fraud. She paused. They're both facing felony counts, real prison time. The words landed with weight I wasn't ready to carry yet. Your mother's at County General, room 314. Initial assessment shows she's coherent and stable, just malnourished and exhausted. I drove to the hospital with my hands tight on the wheel. County General was small but efficient. Room 314 was on the 3rd floor. Through the window, I saw my mother in bed, an IV in her arm, talking to a nurse. She looked smaller, thinner, but her eyes were sharp. I knocked softly. The nurse smiled and stepped aside. Mom. Miles. Her voice was stronger than it had been through the shed wall. They said you made quite a scene. I told the truth. In front of everyone. It was the only way to make it matter. The nurse left us alone. Eileen studied me. You look tired. So do you. I have an excuse, she said dryly. I was locked in a shed. I laughed, then stopped. Don't, she said. I'm still here. She shifted. They told me what you did. The recordings. The evidence. I'm sorry it took so long. You didn't know. He made sure of that. She paused. They say he's going to prison. Probably. Good. No hesitation, no softness, just truth. He stole 3 years of my life, she said. My money, my freedom, my dignity. She met my eyes. He deserves what he gets. A social worker arrived with next steps, hospitalization for malnutrition, then temporary housing while her home was legally restored. What about long-term support? The social worker asked. I'm staying, I said. I'll work here. Eileen raised an eyebrow. Your job? They can find another driver. I can't find another mother. She smiled. A real one. That evening, as I walked to my truck, my phone buzzed. You need to see the news, Cal Red said. I watched the coverage on my phone. The story led every broadcast. Clips of Rowan's speech cut against my evidence. The contrast was brutal. By morning, Rowan and Blaine were charged. Elder exploitation, false imprisonment, financial fraud, forgery, conspiracy. Maximum sentences pursued. I visited Eileen every day that week. Proper care brought her strength back quickly. They tried to make me doubt myself, she said once. But I always knew something was wrong. Within 10 days, she was cleared to return home, her home, legally restored. I helped her settle in, room by room. She touched familiar objects like they were treasures. I thought I'd never see this place again. Your home. The trial was set for 3 months out. The prosecutor called it straightforward. Rowan's attorney floated a plea. Prison time was unavoidable. I found local work, logistics for a regional station, less travel, more stability. Rowan sent one letter from jail, bitter, blaming me. I didn't reply. 3 weeks after the ceremony that wasn't, Eileen and I sat on her porch at sunset. She drank real coffee, not rationed instant. They're saying 7 years, she said. How do you feel about that? I think he earned it. That's not terrible, it's honest. We sat in silence as the sky deepened. Somewhere nearby, Rowan was facing the reality that control wasn't care and family ties didn't excuse cruelty. Here, my mother was free. I'd returned after 10 years to find my name on a ceremony sign and my mother locked in a shed. Now the ceremony was cancelled, the lies exposed, and justice was moving forward. She looked at me. Thank you for coming back. I should have come sooner. You came when it mattered. She squeezed my hand. You saved me. I squeezed back, feeling something settle, not peace, but something close. The town would talk. The trial would make headlines. None of that mattered. My mother was safe. The truth was out, and everyone who tried to erase me while exploiting her was facing exactly what they deserved. I watched the sunset fade to crimson. It was enough.